Hello, this is Dr. Martin Sellers, Dean of the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, coming to you again with another segment of American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Today we have a wonderful program, one that I think is befitting of Lincoln Memorial University and its vision for the future. I'm calling it Medical Complementary Therapies. We're going to be talking about animal, art, music, theater, literary, and other therapies that go along with our medical vision for LMU. We have excellent guests with us today, and I'll talk about them in a moment. But first, let me see what Gary has to say.
Support for our program is made possible by Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee. Further information on academics, campus life, educational programs, admissions, and financial aid, www.lmunet.edu.
Thank you, Gary. We have with us our guests, both physically here and on the phone. We have Dr. James McAllister, Assistant Professor of Music and also Director of the Music Program at Lincoln Memorial University. We have also Dr. Bess Pierce, Associate Professor of Small Animal Internal Medicine. Mr. Brandon Lutterman, Assistant Professor of Art and Director of the Art Program at Lincoln Memorial. We also have Dr. Sandra Weems, who is Assistant Professor of English. She's calling in by phone. And then we also have Mr. Joe Gill, Assistant Professor of Theater and Director of Theater Program. I think he'll be calling in shortly. Today's program is about medical complementary therapies. And if you don't know what that is, that's good, because then you'll get to understand and learn about it right here, right now. But before we go into that discussion, I'd like to say a few things about LMU. We have an excellent university here. There's a wide range of opportunities for students who want to be part of a higher education experience. The 9 schools that we have as part of our university: Allied Health Sciences, School of Business, the Carter Moores School of Education, School of Math and Sciences, Kaler School of Nursing, the DeBusque College of Osteopathic Medicine, Duncan School of Law, College of Veterinary Medicine, and of course the Paul V. Hamilton School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Let me dwell on that school for a moment. In that school, we have a number of programs, and they tend to focus on culture and how our society has developed and where we are going down the road in the future. Programs like art, history, music, media communication, philosophy, religion, social work, psychology, political science, criminal justice, English. I think of these programs as the bedrock of the people that we are and the society that we are, have been, and are becoming. The School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences supports the general education component of our higher education programs here at LMU. We have a lot of students who transfer in from other places. We have a lot of students who trickle in with a handful of transferable credits. That makes me think of the fact that we have a number of veterans who come on campus to begin programs. They come out of the military. Like I did, I had 12 or 15 credits that I got from various ports that I was in, locations, came to college, and was able to assemble them into a program. There are a number of us here, students who are commuting. Many students who come in transfer in from local two-year colleges like Walter State, Southeast, part of the KCTCS program, down here in Tazewell, also out farther, Pellissippi State, Roane State. Lots of students coming in from various places with, as I say, a handful of credits, a lot of credits, a 2-year degree. I have 1 or 2 students that have 3 years of college. They never finished. They came back to LMU. All that is to say that it's a very easy process to apply to LMU, www.lmunet.edu. Just click online and big bold print, top of the menu, application, or admissions and application. If that's a little too much for some of us who are not technologically savvy or not savvy enough, you can call our recruiter, Rachel Schott, at 865-585-4187. I always hate those commercials where they repeat the phone number like 6 times, and you think, gee, I must be a dummy. But let me repeat it. I'll just repeat it twice. 865-585-4187. That's Rachel Schott. She will certainly direct your path to success. And that's what we do here at LMU. We move people to success, and we have great stories of students that have come here and finished their degree and gone on to some of the doctoral programs, terminal degree programs that we have here. We have 8 terminal degree programs. The most recent is our Doctor of Clinical Anatomy program, a PhD in Clinical Anatomy. We have 15 or more. There are some in the process of being approved master degree programs. And so there's much more to Lincoln Memorial here. Our small campus in the bright sunlight next to a very large Tex Turner Arena with great accomplishments, persons who have gone on to become chief justices and great medical practitioners all over the country. And we're very proud of what we do here in our very rural setting. We're a little small city in a great rural setting right here by the Cumberland Mountains. Also, let me mention that this program will be aired again 3 more times throughout the week on Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday. And also, regrettably, this is our last show for the semester. We will come back again in February, I think it is, the first week in February, and present another 10 shows in the spring. However, if you're interested in some of the past performances or shows or segments, www.lmunet.edu, and find the homepage for the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. And there are, I think we have 10 or 12 segments listed on that webpage, and that's for your listening enjoyment. Let me state again that our program has to do today with medical complementary therapies. And I think this is a crucial issue for us, not only here at Lincoln Memorial, but across our nation. We have found, and the folks who are here experts in these areas that I mentioned earlier, we have found that it's one thing to be ill and go to a clinic or a hospital and come back and attempt rehabilitation, but it's another thing to find that there are other means, acceptable means, to progressively become well from various areas of illness. And so I want to introduce, or have them introduce themselves, these folks who are sitting around the table with me and on the phone, and then we'll talk a bit about what these complementary therapies are. And then I have a few questions that I didn't tell them I was going to ask, because I like to make them nervous in advance. It's really great fun about these therapies, to see where they stand with regard to the medical community and society. So let me start, if it's okay with you all. Brandon Lutterman, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go around the horn.
Okay, thank you. My name is Brandon Lutterman. I'm originally from Minnesota. I have MFA in ceramics. I'm back. MFA in ceramics from Kansas State University. I've recently moved here about 1.5 years ago, and I'm very grateful to be in the little historic town of Cumberland Gap where our facilities are. If anybody out there is interested in taking some art classes, you may not be registered as a student or anything, you may look me up and contact me. Be happy to talk to you about anything we have in terms of programming through the summer for non-credit students as well as credit classes. We do have a new class that's called Introduction to Studio Arts, which is for majors and non-majors. So if you're interested in just kind of dabbling and seeing what you got in terms of building your confidence, please give me a ring.
Do you want to say something about the show that's ongoing at the Arts Studio Center?
Sure. We do have a solo show by Brian Wilkerson, who is a professor at Roane State. So we're trying to reach out to local artists in the Appalachian region, and we invite them to have shows, 2 to 3 artists a semester. So he'll be having an opening this week, and it's an excellent show. It's in ceramics. And then we also have some student work that's up throughout our gallery as well to exhibit some of their talents.
Very good. And we also have with us Dr. Bess Pierce, Associate Professor of Small Animal and Internal Medicine.
Hi, thank you. I am a new addition to LMU. I came here in June. Grew up in the area in Atlanta, and actually my grandparents lived in Johnson City, Tennessee. So I came up here many, many times as I was growing up, and I love this region, and so I was excited for an opportunity to come here and join our brand new veterinary college. But I started my training at Tulane University in New Orleans and moved on to Auburn for both graduate school and veterinary college. I have a master's in wildlife biology, and then went into active duty in the U.S. Army Veterinary Corps. Excellent. And spent 15 years going around the world and serving on active duty, and then I had a chance to join faculty at Virginia Tech at the Virginia Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine, so I went over to the reserves. Stayed there 9 years, and then I had the chance to come here. So I am still in the reserves, go to Germany. My unit is in Germany, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Wow, well, we just had Veterans Day, and I want to thank you for your service. I appreciate you being here today. We also have Dr. James McAllister, Assistant Professor of Music and Director of the Music Program here at LMU.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Well, I'm Jim McAllister. I have a PhD in music education from the University of Kansas, Master of Music in Wind Band Conducting from the University of Delaware, and a Bachelor of Music Education from Shenandoah University. And I've been ancillary involved with music therapy for a long time. The undergraduate school at Shenandoah has a very large music therapy program, so I'm familiar with how those things work. And I'm actually going to put a shout out to my alma mater, the University of Kansas, the first university in the United States to actually offer music therapy as a discipline. So Excellent. Very much rooted in those disciplines.
Well, I'm excited about this program. I think the more I think about it, the more relevant and important what we're about to talk about is to all of us. We also have Sandra Weems. Dr. Weems, are you on the phone?
I am.
Hi, Assistant Professor of English, new to our contingency here at LMU. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I am a PhD from the University of Florida, where I studied English and British literature, but I got the opportunity about midway through my graduate work to do some interdisciplinary work with the College of Medicine at UF, where they have a medical humanities program and an increasingly nationally renowned arts and medicine program. Mm-hmm. So, my focus then shifted to medical humanities and narrative medicine, and this is a topic that's very near and dear to me.
Very good. Let me ask any of you, whoever raises their hand or voice first. I read up on complementary, let's see, what is it called? Complementary therapies as much as I could. In fact, when I went online, it said complementary and alternative medicine. Is that different than what we're going to be talking about? And if it is, in what way? Dr. Pierce, how about that?
Well, I would actually like to argue that animal-assisted therapy it should be a bit more mainstream. I wouldn't complementary at best, certainly not alternative, and because I think it has very direct applications to patient care, and we see that in lots of, and I can, as we go along, kind of explain what animal-assisted therapy is, and how we apply that.
Mm-hmm. So we should probably strike the alternative off of our discussion. Isn't that something about herbs and roots and things?
It makes people kind of think of fluffy out there stuff, and I would argue that none of this is.
Right. Agreed.
Well, the present company here would agree, yes, but we're about to find out. So we have about a minute left. Dr. Pierce, since you're already on the uptake here, tell us, if you would, just define animal-assisted therapy.
Right. Well, we look at kind of two different areas, and one is animal-assisted activities versus animal-assisted therapy. And therapy really is the use of animals in a very directed, goal-oriented manner, where we actually want to achieve objectives in behavior, in physical therapy. There are a number of applications. Whereas animal-assisted activities are sort of that meet and greet, feel good, it might be a visit to campus. It might be a visit to a nursing home. And so there really is, but it's a more generalized, they're not really formed goals for those sorts of visits. So animal-assisted therapy is that very directed program.
So when we think of objectives, when you speak of objectives for animal-assisted therapy, we're thinking of like rehabilitation objectives or medical sorts of objectives. Can you give an example of that?
It might be very simple, something like we use them actually in the physical therapy setting, where you have somebody who has had a stroke and needs to work their right side. For example, their right arm doesn't work very well. Throwing a ball is an excellent beneficial exercise. As you can imagine, the human physical therapist probably gets a little bored about the 20th throw, but now put a golden retriever in the picture. And that dog that will endlessly happily bring that ball back and forth, in a very directed, and again, these are very controlled, trained animals. And so that's a simple example of in the actual physical therapy setting.
I was going to say that the retriever that I know would not bring the ball back.
Well, they do
He's out of here.
They do have to be trained.
We're going to take a quick break, and appreciate you listening. We're talking with some fine people who are experts in the fields of therapies, various therapies, and stick with us. We'll be right back.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
Hello again, this is Dr. Martin Sellers, Dean of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, here on the beautiful campus of Lincoln Memorial University in the heart of Claiborne County. We have an excellent program today. It's a program about medical complementary therapies, if you will, and I'm being tested a bit on the word complementary. Some of us think these are not necessarily as more mainstream than complementary, and that's fine. I'm beginning to learn more about this as we sit. We were talking with, and Dr. Bess Pierce is with us, Associate Professor of Small Animal and Internal Medicine here at the the new vet med school that we have out here in Virginia. And you mentioned, Dr. Pierce, a bit about the objectives of animal-assisted therapy, and the difference between that and animal-assisted activity. So you gave us an example of therapy. What would be an example of activity?
Activities are classically, again, kind of that meet and greet. For example, at Virginia Tech, and one of the things that we'd love to introduce to this campus is that visit to, say, college students. That's a tough time. They have to come to school. They leave their pets. It's really a hard thing for them to do. And when we're able to bring those animals to them, very, very popular. It just acts as that social bridge. I could go sit in the middle of the quad. Nobody is going to talk to me. They're not going to stop. If I attach myself to an animal, people stop, they talk. So it brings together people that would really sometimes not communicate or talk to each other, or it's really a great social bridge. So,
if you're sitting in the middle of the quad, it would depend on what animal.
True.
There's a lot. You all know what a polecat is, right? I mean, quite a few of them around here. Usually they're sleeping on the side of the road, or they look like they're sleeping. I don't know what they're doing, but what animals are best in with regard to animal therapy or animal assistance?
Sure, and it is very important to have the right animal. It has to be that animal that can really take a lot of social pressure. They have to be that's why dogs are so popular. Is they're very interactive. They read people extremely well. They're just they've developed along with us, and so they're very social animals, and they kind of thrive in that environment. Cats actually can make good therapy animals, but something as simple as bird watching or having fish. We know that watching fish which lowers blood pressure. And so there's, it can be small pieces, it can be larger. We see equitherapy with horses, zoo nature therapy. There's all sorts of applications.
I had a job once. I was working for a president. I was a vice president at another college, and she was horrible on me. And every day I would come home and sit with Link, who's my dog. That and a cold beer. And Link, it was just a wonderful, and he heard everything I said. Even today, he's never told anybody all those secrets that I.
That's true.
A wonderful, wonderful guy. Is there evidence to support the idea that animal therapy, animal activity does help? I mean, how does that? What's the research on this? Is there much of it?
There is becoming a lot more out there. In the early days, one of the very first studies we saw in the 1990s were that people who had myocardial infarctions or heart attacks had a doubled survival rate at a year if they had a dog. And if you can imagine a drug that had that same effect, all of the companies would be on it. Everybody would be investing in this, and so that was some of the very early work. And then the question has always been, well, why? Why does that happen? I mean, we know now that a lot of it has to do with kind of neuroendocrine, the release of chemicals in our body that, like the bonding hormone oxytocin, is getting a lot of focus right now. We know positive interactions with our dogs actually releases oxytocin, both interestingly enough, in the dog and in the person. And so it helps kind of that bonding, so really leveraging that human-animal bond, and beta endorphins, and helps lower cortisol in people. And there are just a number of sort of neuroendocrine activities that go on when we have positive interactions with animals.
Does it take quite a bit to train an animal to be an activity animal or a therapy animal?
You really have to have that well-suited animal, and then they go through a whole process. Like, say, the dogs that we take to therapy visits, they are absolutely trained, registered. They should be registered. I would highly encourage that, because it does let us really evaluate them, train them, work with them, and also teaches us what to watch for in that animal and how to advocate for that animal.
A good question you mentioned in your email. What's the difference between a dog that's a therapy dog and a service dog? I wonder this myself.
Right, very, very important difference. The service dogs are dogs that provide a service for a person with a disability. They are protected by the ADA, the American with Disabilities Act, which means they have public access to restaurants and grocery stores and places where pets are not allowed. Therapy animals are actually not recognized by the ADA, and so they are. Most people, by good graces, allow them to come into buildings and various settings, but they are not service dogs, and they don't have that legal protection.
We have I was just on a committee, and we were interviewing a young lady. We have a pet-friendly couple of dorms or residential halls here, and she has a cat. She has mild to medium depression, and has that cat with her a lot. And goes back to her area where she lives with I believe she lives in one of the dorms that has 3 suites where 2 people stay in each room. And the cat gets along with her roommate, and the roommate gets along with the cat, and the cat gets along with her. And she, I know her mother, and her mother appreciates LMU, that we've expanded to. Not all colleges allow this. In fact, the vast majority, I would say, and you would know more than this than I do not allow animals. And I've always wondered about that. I mean, as long as they can be taken care of, and there's a way to filter them into the mainstream of how the student's living, I see no problem with it. How do I, if I'm out here in a community, and there's a lot of folks listening to this program, we're broadcasting locally, but we also are worldwide through media streaming. How would someone get involved if they wanted to be someone involved in, not just the owner of a cat, but involved in this whole program or process? How would someone do that?
Right. There are a couple of large national and actually international organizations, but Pet Partners is one of them. They are probably the best formed, longest standing group that trains and works with teams that they can be registered. And they can start to do visits, within the community. The others, we have actually Therapy Dogs International is another program that can actually help you train and evaluate and work with your dog. And these are actually Pet Partners. Interestingly enough, they have therapy llamas, rabbits, rats, birds, a number of, whereas Therapy Dogs International is clearly just the dog part of it. Also, we have a human animal bond in Tennessee, which is actually out of the Big Orange. I don't know if I can actually mention that on.
Absolutely don't mention. As long as you don't say Big Blue, we're okay.
Right. They're seated in at Knoxville at UT, actually in the veterinary college, and they have teams all around the state for sort of local community interactions.
Well, I'm very excited about this. I think that we'll probably get phone calls to the station wondering how to get in touch with you, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But we also have Dr. Weems on the phone. She's our person who. And I don't know a lot about this. Dr. Weems, are you there? I'm sure
I am. I am here. Yes.
Tell us what literature therapy. I'm sure I'm calling it the wrong thing, but what is it that your interests are? Where do they lie in all of this?
Well, my specific interests fall in the area of what's called reflective writing, but the use of literature and poetry in medical settings generally is, of course, right up my alley. It was a revelation to me to learn that physicians are using literature, poetry, and certain types of writing in different settings, different clinical settings with patients who suffer from different conditions or diseases, and that these language arts, if you will, therapies, can actually help heal in some capacities.
Can you give a more specific example? This. Are we talking about someone coming to somebody's house and reading to them, or are we talking about in a hospital setting someone being asked to write poetry? Can you give a more clear example?
There are lots of different methods, and it depends on the hospital or the physician who's in charge of the area. But for instance, at the University of Florida, where I trained, we had certain certified poetry therapists who would come in and work with a group of, for example, cancer patients and take them through these poetry writing exercises that at the very least would enable the patients to lessen their anxiety and tolerate some of their treatment better. When I say healing, I do not mean that writing poetry can heal cancer, but what it does do is some of the things that Dr. Pierce was talking about, lower blood pressure, it boosts the immune system, it lowers your heart rate, and there are many different clinical trials underway, and many that have been done in the past several years that indicate poetry therapy, bibliotherapy, and reflective writing have really interesting positive effects on our bodies.
Are our medical schools and medical students that are being taught in medical schools, are they aware of this? Is there any component in their teaching? Do you happen to know?
Absolutely. There's a growing field of medical humanities. It's certainly burgeoning in the United States. It's really well established in Europe, particularly the UK. But many of our top-notch medical schools in this country, like Columbia and Harvard and Brown and NYU, UPenn, a whole bunch of them have medical humanities and narrative medicine programs. Where
medical humanities, I heard that now.
Yes.
Arts, humanities, and social sciences. Maybe we need to branch out a little bit in our literature department and include some of this learning at the undergraduate level. You think that would be, are there skills there that would be useful to undergraduates in this regard?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I am delighted to be teaching a narrative medicine course in the spring. It is a very useful course if you're a student who's going into any of the science fields. I have some vet tech students who are looking forward to taking the course, but also some pre-med students. But my English students are excited about it too, because it is engaging with literature, which we think about as a path pastime, something pleasurable, sitting down and reading a good book, or reading poetry. That's a pleasure. But they have these acts have very practical uses in the medical arts. And
the vision for our DO school, osteopathic school, is it's a more holistic view of medicine and how healing occurs, and it's come through many years of development, and part of it is to include an awareness of other therapies that may be helpful to repairing persons. And I think the idea of medical humanities, which I'm now going to call it forever, is a wonderful idea. Now, I think can she stay on the phone? I'm asking Gary as well. Okay, if you'll stick with us, we'll come back. We're going to have a brief visit with our commercial benefactors here.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Thank you.
Thanks.
The Lighthouse Career Training Center thrift store is open to the tri-state community. Items available for purchase include adult and children's clothing and shoes, household furnishings, appliances, baby items, toys, books, and glassware. Open Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Located in the Old Bell County Vocational Building between U.S. Highway 119 and Old Bell High Road. Their phone number is 606-337-3165. All proceeds go to the Lighthouse Career Training Center, a nonprofit organization assisting at-risk youth and adults with skills to help them succeed in their life plans.
Every single one of his medical bills, everything is just all taken care of.
We have phenomenal research, outstanding clinical care, and the generosity of public, which allow us to treat patients regardless of what it takes.
At St. Jude, families never receive a bill for treatment, travel, housing, or food, because the only thing a family should worry about is helping their child live.
Because of you.
Gracias a ti. Because of you.
There is St. Jude.
On Tuesday evenings here on WLMU, you can tune into Music City Roots, a nationally syndicated program that airs from the stage of the historic Loveless Cafe in Nashville, Tennessee. Music City Roots is recorded live and hosted by Jim Lauderdale. It features Americana, roots, rock, blues, string band, singer-songwriter, and other forms of American roots music. It's Music City Roots every Tuesday night from 6 to 7 here on WLMU.
On Wednesday evenings, you can tune your radio to WLMU and hear the best blues in the tri-state area with your host, Gary Daniels. He'll be playing the best blues artists of today and the best blues artists of yesteryear. Everything from Robert Johnson, Buddy Guy, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Muddy Waters, and many more. It's Wednesday Evening Blues from 9 to 11, right here on 91.3 WLMU.
Hello again, this is Dr. Martin Sellers, Dean of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences here at the beautiful campus of Lincoln Memorial University, and we're having a program today, a wonderful program, about medical therapies or medical complementary therapies. We have with us Dr. James McAllister, Assistant Professor of Music and Director of the Music Program, Dr. Bess Pierce, Associate Professor of Small Animal Internal Medicine, Brandon Lutterman, Assistant Professor of Art, Director of our Art Program. Joe Gill is joining us now. He's on the phone, Assistant Professor of Theater and Director of the Theater Program, and Dr. Sandra Weems, Assistant Professor of English.
Support for this program is made possible by Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee. Further information on academics, campus life, educational programs, admissions, and financial aid, and much, much more at www.lmunet.edu.
Now that voice was our good friend John. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm John Hobbs. I'm an undergrad student here. I'm studying for mathematics and secondary education. It's a mouthful.
We're trying to get him into arts, humanities, and social sciences, but kicking and screaming, he won't come. But that's okay. Math is liberal arts. We're good with that. And I asked John a minute ago, I didn't realize this, but he has a dog that's a very close loved one to him, and he's experienced that closeness to a pet that's allowed him to develop over time as a young man into his college world here, which I think somewhat proves the point that Dr. Pierce was speaking of earlier with regard to the importance of animals in our lives. You want to speak about that a bit, John?
I have a Beagle Foxhound mix named Tucker, and he is one of the most lively dogs that you could ever actually see. It's a very big mood booster. And ever since leaving home and everything, like my mood and my motivation, more or less, has been kind of brought down. And every time that I go home and I get to see my dog, it's like, I can do this now. It's like, hey, this is that little boost that I need to get me through the day, and I'd like to get him registered as an ESA, which is an emotional support animal, which is different than service dogs and therapy dogs. But they don't hold the same rights.
It's amazing how you mentioned emotional booster and sort of a way of getting one out of the doldrums and like that. And I think all of us have animals or have had animals. I know I have a dog at home, and he is the most frisky thing in the world. And in the morning when I get up, which when I usually feel my worst, I take him for a walk. When I come back, I feel great. I mean, it's just like night and day. Thank you for that, John. We appreciate that. I want to ask Mr. Gill. Are you on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Joe Gill, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Well, my name is Joseph Gill. I'm a new professor of theater at LMU, and I just moved here about 3 months ago. And I have an MA, Masters of Theater Arts from Cal State University, Los Angeles, as well as a Masters of Fine Arts for Theater and Contemporary Performance from Naropa University.
So tell us, Joe, what is the history of theater and therapy? Can you tell us about that?
Now there's a big, long history, and I would say it goes back to Aristotle and the Poetics.
You have 30 seconds.
Oh my God! So all you have to say is that Aristotle mentioned things about the catharsis, and catharsis is meaning the cleansing, the process of releasing and providing relief, of repressed emotions. And through theater, he was noticing that people were able to witness this and experience a catharsis, have this cleansing. And then it goes on to even Freud and his work with catharsis and psychotherapy. In the 1800s, as well as influencing Ibsen and Strindberg and Chekhov in their playwrights and their plays. And going on further, I would just jump into the 60s, where instead of theater taking from this psychology started taking from theater, using with creative dramatics. And that was, sort of an improvisational, non-exhibition type of process, a form of drama where participants are guided by a leader to enact and reflect and experience real-life situations. And from that came drama therapy, which is a form of expressive therapy.
Can you give a few clear examples of how theater might be a therapy for someone who's, let's say, rehabilitating in some way, coming off a depression, or trying to, maybe has some mental instabilities?
Well, it could be any way you depending on what the issue is, whatever they want to get worked on. So we can do things such as role reversal. If you're having a situation such as a marriage arguments, if this is something as if two couples aren't getting along, they would do sort of role playing, in which the therapist would sit there and have them play each other's, do each other's dialogue, which is a sort of theater game. Or you do sort of interviews. If you have somebody who had such a traumatic experience as a younger child and you don't quite know what is going on in them, you'd sort of have them interview and do it a sort of interview that they take on another character. Mm-hmm. And that would be also through maybe puppets or masks, mm-hmm. or use of dolls, mm-hmm. or being creative with fabric and such as furnitures. Mm-hmm.
There's been some therapies for children who have been abused, let's say, where the use of dolls has helped them to explain what happened to investigators, and then to also be able to overcome. Are you familiar?
That's where they would go. It's sort of use of, when psychotherapists, they would sort of use this sort of distancing. So it's not direct. So the person who's the person in therapy will be able to sort of not deal directly with it, but then they could talk around it, and sort of use of maybe even using masks, that they put on a mask and pretend to be the person who they're talking about, or have a little bit more courage to release the information that's in them, that what's holding them back.
Right, makes good sense. Let me ask you to stay right on the phone, sure. Joe, and we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about art therapy. You and I, Mr. Lutterman, have been working toward, you mostly, me on just on the periphery, working toward developing an art therapy track or concentration in the art program here at LMU, which I think, and to be honest with you, I think that's the tip of the iceberg. I think we're going to move forward with some of these other means of help, if you will. Tell us about an art therapy concentration.
Well, right now we currently have painting and drawing, and then we're really trying to add to our horizons here at LMU to bring more students, is also to give them more options so that they can be more successful in their careers as they leave LMU. So our goals is to create a 3D concentration and an art therapy concentration. A lot of our students here at LMU are double majoring, psychology and art, or minoring in art or minoring in psychology. So we're trying to combine the two to make their degree here more useful and quick. Instead of spending more time here, they're going to get the same essential credits, but they're going to have a degree in art therapy, which then they can go on to a master's program that would serve them well to get certified in art therapy.
And let's say someone has a degree and is certified in art therapy. Can you give us a couple of clear examples on how art therapy might be used to help someone?
There's a lot of different options, actually, and it's a growing field. It's actually an innovation, I would call it, in today's society, where we have a lot of more diagnoses in autism and all kinds of spectrums, and art therapy can come into a large part and play with that. And so you can find jobs in hospices and in daycare centers. You could find veterans hospitals. So and all kinds of hospitals around the world are searching for these kinds of positions. Mm-hmm. And also now there's a lot more jobs in academia with art therapy. So it's a growing trend, and that's why we're kind of working on this track to make sure we're staying innovative and trying to lead our students to success.
My wife, a while back, was working. She has a background in speech therapy, and she was working with autistic kids over here in Cumberland Gap High School, as a matter of fact, and Claiborne. And she used to develop puzzles and clay models, I think that's what it was, for them to have hands-on, and they would get so concentrated on that effort. It was amazing to see them turn into a different person, concentrating their effort on what they were doing in front of them to create something and then hand it over to her. It's just amazing to experience. Well,
to piggyback on that a little bit, there's so many ways, like we've already expressed some of the terminology is endorphins and all these different things that will rush, that will create these sensations. And while creating art, you might not realize it at the time, but through the process there's a lot of rehabilitation factors there. While painting, while working with clay, there's all kinds of materials that lend themselves to certain different diagnoses and illnesses. Not all these are going to be an instantaneous kind of perfect solving, but they're going to take a step towards the right direction. And especially with ceramics, watercolor, color pencil, all these things can be a therapeutical bond that you might not realize until you really experience it. Mm-hmm. And it's another great thing within our undergraduate level programming is students can develop a great confidence, which is also a therapeutical result from doing art, where you leave this campus with a better understanding of problem-solving, critical thinking that's going to propel you through life. Mm-hmm. So it's not just about the product, it's about the process and the confidence building that will help you throughout the rest of your career.
So what does it mean to have an art therapist prescribe an art process?
Well, they're all trained professionals with the psychology background, so they're going to have certain materials that's going to aid those certain illnesses, and I'll leave it to them because I'm not certified, but to figure out what materials would aid them best. But I'm a strong believer in ceramics because I teach ceramics, and I've seen the benefits of ceramics throughout my career. I've taught autistic students in my studio one-on-one, and I've seen the benefits personally. Even though I'm not certified, I know it's a great asset.
Absolutely. Let's talk a bit about music therapy, and we're probably going to go on break here shortly, so if you could just start out and we'll come back, I'm sure. Tell us a bit, Dr. McAllister, what is it?
Well, I'm really fascinated listening to all these conversations about the various therapies, and it seems to me that all these kind of boil down to the same thing, where we're treating not only the body, but we're treating the mind and we're treating the soul all at the same time with all these various different therapies. And we talk about pet therapy and art therapy and literature therapy and music therapy, and we're really all kind of biting at the same apple, so to speak, because we're really seeking to improve the quality of life of people who are in pain, people who are suffering, people who have needs that this kind of thing can flourish. Essentially, music therapy is using music to reach and to therapize or provide therapy for people who are having a lot of various conditions. I've seen very specifically in geriatrics where people with Alzheimer's disease come alive when they are presented with music from their childhood, for example, and they become much more lucid when they're able to kind of go back in time, so to speak, to when they were younger. And we see that music really kind of builds pathways in the brain and enables us to kind of connect things that otherwise may not have been connected before. So in terms of geriatrics and people with autism, people with Alzheimer's disease, we see how music can really connect to those folks and help make them a little bit more lucid.
Does a person have to be a musician or a music performer in order to be involved in music therapy?
Well, absolutely. Music therapy is a trained musician track, which means that music therapists would take the same type of courses that any music major would: music theory, piano class, ear training, that type of thing. But they're also going to specialize in various practices. They're going to specialize in various types of therapy, and they're going to specialize in learning how to use materials and how to reach people who may or may not be able to be reached.
Very good. Fascinating, all of our discussions. We're going to come back and talk a little bit more about music therapy. Then I have some questions for all of our enthusiasts, if you will. Dr. Martin Sellers, Dean, Arts and Humanities and Social Sciences, will be back with you. Dr. Martin Sellers back with you. Our program today on American culture, arts, humanities, and social sciences is medical therapies or medical complementary therapies. We've been talking about pet, art, music, theater, literary therapies. A fascinating program. We left off with a bit of a discussion with Dr. McAllister here, explaining what music therapy is. And I wanted to ask you, Dr. McAllister, with regard to career opportunities, someone comes through musical therapy concentration, let's say, in music, and maybe they have an education degree as well as a music degree. Where would you recommend that they would go?
Well, you see this as a growth field in music. I think Brandon was saying it with art therapy, that this is absolutely a burgeoning field, and this is something that we're finding more and more opportunities for students to find careers. And traditionally in music, you've had essentially two choices if you wanted to become a professional musician. You were going to either become a teacher, or you were going to become a performer. And the music therapy aspect allows people to seek a different pathway to kind of move forward with that. I know a lot of music therapists who work for large hospitals. I know a lot of music therapists who work for small hospitals. I know a lot of music therapists who work for school systems. You can find music therapists at nursing homes. You can find music therapists in any kind of clinic, any kind of place where they're offering healing, any kind of place where they're offering services to folks who may need various types of therapy. So it's absolutely a growth field, and it's absolutely, I think we're on the cusp, I think, of a kind of growth explosion in all these therapies.
Now that we have not even touched the iceberg, we've only hit the tip of it, if you will, on what these therapies are. And I was just saying to Gary Daniels, our producer, that we really need a 3 or 4 hour program, maybe a 2 hour program at the least, but 3 or 4 hours to talk about these things. But at least in this program, we can touch base with it, just touch it a little bit, and have a little test of it. Let me go through a couple of things I wanted to ask all of you. But since there's 5 of you on experts, if you will, on these therapies, let me just run a couple of questions by a couple of you at a time. For example, Mr. Lutterman, maybe Dr. Pierce. what's your view of our health officials? And I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. Are health officials aware, as they should be, of these kinds of therapies and how they may help them in helping patients? If you two would speak to that.
Well, I think it's certainly becoming, as you said, much more to the forefront. And as we produce data, and really that's what it takes, is we have to show that these are going to make a statistical difference, that it's going to make a real difference, regardless of the anecdotal. We know how pets make us feel, but we have to be able to show that in order for it to become mainstream and covered by insurance and, a part of the therapeutic package that can be actually prescribed.
So why do you think, it just strikes me, and we mentioned a bit about the research that's going on, why does it take so long? It seems to me that I've heard of pet therapy, particularly, and music therapy more so, and art therapy. Why does it take so long to have these available out here in a more rigorous and clear way?
I think some of it is just waiting for the technology to evolve. Now we have the capability to look at salivary cortisol or to test, certain endorphins in tears. And functional MRIs are a huge area. I'm sure that in music and art and these other therapies that functional MRIs are really showing us fascinating patterns of what lights up in the brain. We're actually doing functional MRIs in dogs, too, that show us that very similar areas light up in the brain. And so I think all these technologies help us.
Yeah, and you can just see in the growing fields too that throughout the all the different hospitals and schools that they're bringing on more professionals in these areas because it's such a beneficial trend. You're also seeing it with the growth of the diagnosis of the pharmaceutical companies. So this is actually a great way to kind of combat that, I think, is saying, hey, why don't you see an art therapist for a little while? Why don't you do a couple paintings and see where this student or the kid with autism will go before you prescribe them with horse tranquilizer pill or whatever they prescribe.
Some horror. Let me, Dr. Weems and Joe Gill. Let me run this. You all are somewhat. You both are aware of Shakespeare, so I think of you sort of in the same arena, if you will, on the same stage. Is there a difference in either of those areas of therapy, theater, arts, or literature, with how they would be meted out to either adults or children? Is there any difference that you see? Dr. Weems, you can go first.
Well, certainly the level of text that you would, approach a child with would be different from something you would use with an adult. But the thing is that even pre-verbal children have access to, for instance, poetry therapy, where one example is a child with a terminal illness who works with a poetry therapist that talks with her about her favorite pet cat, for instance, and she tells the story of her cat as the medical team is drawing blood or doing some other kind of procedure on her. It's a means of distraction, but it's also a way of engaging her in a narrative that the poetry therapist is then recording for her in a poetic form. She doesn't have the ability to write yet, but she has the ability to tell this precious story about her cat. And it distracts her, it makes her happy, and it certainly helps her get through this difficult procedure easier. That would be, a marked difference from how an adult in that situation would be treated.
Yeah, that's a good example. Joe Gill, what about children versus adults and theater therapy? I will agree with Dr. Weems with maybe the content is maybe something that I would probably change, but the same play is play. Playing on a playground is the same way, and playing using different theatrical techniques to get through to a patient could be either for adults or for children. As a matter of fact, they use very similar things, whether using puppets for the adults, for an arguing couple, or puppets for children dealing with some innermost feelings, and all that. So it depends on. I do it the same as when I teach young children or I teach adults. I use the same play in my rehearsals. So it's very similar. Very good. And let me ask you this, just crossed my mind, over the summer we had our theater director pass away at a very early age. the students of theater rose up. When I think about this, I get goosebumps. My heart palpitates because they came back just as such a caring and loving group of students. Did any of the theater therapy protocol? Was any of that something that you utilized when you first met with them and learned of the tragedy that occurred?
Not specifically for that reason. I do play a lot of theatrical improvisations with them, and getting them to also open up to me. But I'm going to go on a further thing. Most recently, as a matter of fact, this afternoon in my class, in my theater design class, I had, my two students that came into that class, they weren't feeling very good today. And today we worked on, this is going on with Professor Lutterman's, I started doing some chalk drawing with them, just to get them freeing, because they're doing costume design. And by doing this, they both had calmed down. They were very upset about the past weeks of what's been going on in their lives and stuff. So through that, they were able to relax and start saying, this is fun, and start doing sort of physical, sort of occupational type of therapy that they can do to get their minds into the present, as opposed to dealing with the past, or so it was a slight distraction, but it worked out pretty well for them today. And it's using the therapy of drawing, just getting hands on chalk, spreading out the chalk.
Let me turn to Dr. McAllister here, sitting next to me, on a question about, it just occurred to me that not all of our, the program that we're on is American culture. Not all cultures are the same. Thinking through music therapy or any of these therapies, do they account for cultural diversity between and among different groups and peoples? What would you say?
That's an interesting question. It would seem to me that anytime that you can employ the art or culture of another diverse group, for example, if you're learning more about a different segment of society, the first place you go is to visit their art and culture. The first place that you go is to visit their music, is to go and make music with people who do that very, very well, or paint or do sculpture or those kind of things. So I would say it would be a very logical progression to increase diversity by doing these types of therapies. Brandy, would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
That's all you're going to say? Just absolutely? Nothing else?
I was just looking at the clock, make sure I had enough time, because I could go on and on and on.
No, I know you could. I've been at the other side of you, on and on and on. But let me ask, because of time, let me ask Dr. Pierce, only because I think you're a little bit closer to the medical profession up here than I am, certainly. Why are these therapies not reimbursed by insurance?
Well, again, because we haven't been able to show it with data that this is, again, an effective, and we're beginning to see that data come forward. And so I'm very excited about the future that we will be able to actually prescribe some of these things. And it just simply, the data has not been there, and it hasn't been prominent enough.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, whether you believe in chiropractic or not, I do, because I have had a bad back that I thought I was going to die one day, and I went to chiropractic, and within 3 days I was back on my feet. And I've had that experience a number of times. Chiropractic took a long time before Blue Cross, I don't want to dump on Blue Cross Blue Shield, but before insurance companies recognized them. And I think that's there's something about that gap between, we kind of know it works, and yet it's not being recognized. And I think we're in that gap, would you say, for a lot of the therapeutical designs that we currently have. I think we're getting close to the end of our segment here, and I was going to ask all of you around the table who you voted for president, but I'm not going to do that. Unfortunately, not enough time, so I can't do that. So I want to thank all of you for being part of the program. Dr. Weems and Joe Gill on the phone, thank you for being part of the program.
Thanks for inviting me.
And the gracious attendees around the radio console here, Dr. Pierce, Dr. McAllister, and Mr. Lutterman, we thank you for being here. I think this was a fascinating program, and appreciate you, Gary. Again, we're going to be off doing some other things until February, but these programs are now existent on the LMU.net.edu website, on the School of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences webpage. And so I just want to mention that American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences at LMU is a program of excellence. And this afternoon's program was produced by Gary Daniels, our student production assistant, John Hobbs, our program director, Clay Stanifer, who we never see for some reason. He must be hiding in a room here somewhere. Our broadcast engineer, Don Berggraf. Our executive producer is Tony Spinoza, who does listen because he comes in afterwards and says hello. Our theme music is White Horses, as performed by Tierra Negra and Muriel Anderson. American Culture, Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences at LMU will rebroadcast again this Saturday at 10 a.m., Sunday at 8 p.m., and next Tuesday at 7 a.m. This has been a WLMU radio production, 91.3 FM, LMU, Harrogate, Tennessee.
Support for this program is made possible by Lincoln Memorial University in Harrogate, Tennessee. Further information on academics, campus life, educational programs, admissions and financial aid, and much, much more at www.lmunet.edu.